the next day, the second day of our Planetarium Congress. Welcome everybody to this triple encounter, historical encounter from the South brand, American, Latin American brand, from Central America and from South America, from Argentina, Mexico, and El Salvador. Thank you so much for being here another day with us. Today we're having from the International Coordination International Panel for this first day of Thursday for this Planetarium Congress. From India, our guest speaker is Rituraj Pukan. Hi Rituraj, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much, Kerry. First of all, I must thank you for this wonderful opportunity and congratulate you for organizing such a huge and impactful conference. It's such an honor to be here.
Thank you so much for participating here, and we are so expecting your presentation. So I will introduce Rag, okay? Rituraj Pukan is an environmental writer, adventurer, and naturalist based out of Assam, a biodiversity-rich, climate change-impacted province in the northeast of India. As the National Coordinator for Biodiversity for the Climate Reality Project India, Chief Operating Office Worker of Walk for Water, and Secretary General of Green Guard Nature Organization. He facilitates awareness and action on the three W's, warming, water, and wildlife, working with all stakeholders, including indigenous communities, students, civil society, business, and media for a positive societal impact. Having worked extensively at the grassroots, he says, water is the local issue of global climate change for people and for biodiversity. Rituraj was trained as a climate reality leader by Nobel laureate Al Gore and was featured in the former US Vice President's 2016 book, An Inconvenient Sequel, Truth to Power. Rituraj is a member of the International Union for Conservation of Nature and sits on the board of civil society groups in the Americas, Europe, and Australia. We are so thankful to have you here. Rituraj, please, we're expecting your presentation, so go ahead.
Thank you very much for that kind presentation. As soon as my screen sharing is disabled, so once you enable my screen sharing, I will be able to share the screen.
Okay. You know you have the green button over there?
Yeah,
You
but
can press the green button.
it's disabled now. I'm not able to share. You have to
Okay.
enable it.
Tere, para que pueda compartir la pantalla. No la puede compartir. Sí, you can do it. Just press the green button again, please.
Yes.
Gracias, Tere. There you go. Awesome. Okay, I can see it. Everybody can see it. Yeah.
Right. Perfect. Uh,
Okay.
so, so my name is Rituraj Phukan, Raj, and I'm a volunteer with Parvati Foundation, an international NGO, non-profit dedicated to a healthy world. First of all, I would like to show you where I come from. This is Assam in the northeast of India, a very biodiversity rich but early climate impacted region. And we are famous for the one-horned rhino, as you see the picture on in the bottom. And I grew up in the middle of a civil war-like condition where we were threatened by displaced people, and I always used to wonder why people move from one country to the other and cause all these societal problems. And it took me a trip to Antarctica back in 2013 to understand that it is actually all related to climate change and all the floods and erosions and conflicts that was happening in my home region, home province, was due to climate change. And my first action as a climate in the field of climate activity was from Antarctica, and that was on 2nd March 2013 when I joined the Pacific Islands Warrior Day of Action and did a solidarity uh, protest from Antarctica, and that actually started my climate journey. So coming to back to the presentation, all of us live in an interconnected world. We each belong to and are part of a greater whole, like drops of water in the ocean of life. Whatever we think, feel, or do ripples like a wave through this ocean and touches everyone, and then in turn that touches us. We can see it in how acts of kindness can spread across the world. We can also see how a cough in one market can shut down cities everywhere. If you have been feeling that something is terribly wrong with our world, you are not alone and you are not wrong. Amidst our current pandemic crisis, people everywhere are beginning to sense a deeper problem with our shared home. You can feel it in the rising floods, the raging fires, and the disappearing lands. But you can also feel it in the increasing violence, stress, and divisiveness happening today. It's a global emergency on all levels, and we must address it at its root. Even if the situation seems insurmountable, the truth is you have the power for change. That is what this presentation is about. For centuries, we used to believe that our world was flat. Eventually, we came to understand that the earth is round. But it is time we see things even more clearly. We and our world exist within a vast and intelligent whole. And when we understand the power we have because we are interconnected, we can change the world. Here is someone who understands this, and she dreams big and puts it into action. This is Parvati, a chart topping, award winning Canadian musician and author who is the founder and CEO of the all volunteer international nonprofit Parvati Foundation. We have an uniquely effective plan for a healthy world born on the northernmost reaches of the Arctic Ocean. The following may sound like fiction, but it is a true story. During an unusually hot summer in Toronto, Parvati was about to do a concert tour in Asia, but she kept having a dream of flying on ice while a blue whale swam below. She told her music manager the whale was calling her to the North Pole and insisted that they postpone her tour so she could travel instead to the top of the world to raise awareness of the melting sea ice. 3 weeks later, she was in a remote village in the high Arctic on her way to the North Pole. That's where two Inuit elders greeted Parvati and said, "You are the one who has come to do healing for the planet. We knew you were coming," the whale told us. In that moment, Parvati understood we are all interconnected. Nature's intelligence will work through us if we are willing to listen. Here is Parvati making history in the northernmost musical performance ever. While Parvati was in the Arctic, she met with elders, hunters, ecologists. She spoke on city council and presented and performed at schools. Everyone she met gave her the same message to the south. The ice is melting. Animals are dying. People are suffering. It was clear. The Arctic Ocean was sick, and that was a symptom of a bigger problem. Our collective greed and disconnected thinking are hurting us all. Last year, I was in Svalbard, and within that week, about 200 of these beautiful Svalbard reindeer died of starvation because instead of snowing, it was raining. And when the rain freezes to hard ice, the deer cannot break through that ice to reach the grass they need to feed, and therefore they starve to death. Already, the Svalbard reindeer, which is so important for the people living in the Arctic, are threatened and their sizes are shrinking and they're losing their ground in many places. After Parvati returned to Toronto, she founded Parvati Foundation with the mission to immediately protect our planetary life support system, the Arctic Ocean. For millions of years, long before humans ever walked the earth, the Arctic Ocean has kept our planet cool, like an air conditioner, and healthy, like a medical mask. It does this in 7 important ways. It protects our home from rising sea levels. It regulates our world's weather patterns that grow the food and resources we all depend on. It safeguards us from drastic rise in global emissions, providing us with clean air. It protects us from future pandemics by supporting our global immunity. It helps to balance our economies by preventing natural disasters. By doing all this, it preserves stable, healthy societies and it supports world peace. But the ice is melting very quickly, and governments and businesses around the world want to profit of the thaw. Here are some points to illustrate the seriousness of this, what it means to you and our world, and what we can do about it. Scientists at the Yale University has shown there is 75% less Arctic ice in the summer than there was just 50 years ago. Where the ice once reflected half of the sun's heat back out into space, the exposed Arctic water now absorbs 90% of the heat, changing our world air conditioner to a warming kettle. When the sea ice melts, the Arctic air warms up. So does the land. And then sea levels rise all over the planet. At least 270 million people live in coastal cities. If we don't act now, sea level rise will redraw the map of the world and displace billions. And the ice melts, global weather patterns destabilize, floods and droughts are on the rise, hitting hardest in vulnerable areas. A healing planet also means crop failures as well as water and food shortages. While air pollution from burning fossil fuel kills 10,000 people every day, scientists agree that Arctic oil must stay off limits to keep the world from heating up more than 2 degrees Celsius. Arctic ice has been protecting us from 140 trillion grams of carbon dioxide being emitted into the atmosphere. This means the newly open waters threaten our transition of fossil fuels to renewable energies. In addition, the Arctic Ocean is a safe refuge for 17 different species of whales that help us breathe, three of whom live there the entire year. Through what is known as the whale pump effect, whales bring nutrients from the ocean depths to fertilize phytoplankton at the ocean surface, which captures carbon out of the air and are responsible for half the oxygen we breathe, or every second breath. Phytoplankton also captures nearly half of global CO2 production, equivalent to 1.7 trillion trees a year. But as ship strikes are a leading cause of whale dreams, exploitation of the Arctic Ocean threatens both whales and us. Commercial fishing trawlers damage the ice as well as the ocean floor. Large ships break up the ice. The ice becomes dark from dirty fuel, so that now it absorbs rather than reflects the sun's heat, further accelerating the thaw. Arctic ice has also been freezing thousands of years of pathogens, viruses, and bacteria with the potential to kill us. We don't know all that's buried under the ice, but we know it includes Spanish flu, smallpox, the plague, and anthrax. For perspective, COVID-19 contagious with about 5% mortality. Spanish flu contagious with about 2.5 mortality, killed over 22 million people. Plague as contagious with 10% mortality. Smallpox twice as contagious with 30% mortality. Anthrax so deadly it's a bioterrorism agent with 50% mortality. You might think these won't reach us in the south, but we know how fast a novel pathogen can travel the world, and the Arctic has another danger that multiplies this risk. Arctic soil contains methane equivalent to 4 to 5 times all the carbon dioxide we have emitted since 1850. As permafrost melts, methane seeps or erupts to leave craters like this. What happens in these craters? Massive planetary warming. Methane is 30 times more powerful than CO2 in capturing heat. Scientists warn that the biggest potential methane releases over a short period of time would lead to inundation, extreme heat stress, droughts, and storms, with nearly $60 trillion of damage, undermining the global financial system. The methane deposits in the Arctic continental shaft, where most explosion takes place, are unstable. Any interference with the seabed could trigger their release. In addition, a large-scale eruption could uh, disperse Arctic germs far and wide for a potential pandemic in what Dr. Boris Kashingos of the Russian Academy of Science has described as a catastrophe worse than Chernobyl. In what was a natural peace sanctuary for millennia, Russia and NATO states are building up military presence to claim what lies beneath the sea. The sum of all of these stresses on in our world, heat, rising seas, natural disasters, crop failures, disease, economic instability, increased militarization leads to unrest, mass migration, refugees, and violence. We must
Rituraj,
consider
You have 5 minutes.
we must consider that the disconnected thinking that led to these problems now needs more suffering in turn. We will now quickly scroll down to the towards the end because we are running out of time. So we must protect 50% of the planet to prevent mass extinction. That's what scientists say. And can we do it? Yes, Marine Arctic Peace Sanctuary provides that possibility.
Okay, incredible. Thank you so much. I have a couple of questions. The first question is, I know you made that expedition to the Arctic, right?
Yes.
What it was the best experience in the Arctic and the worst one?
I would say the best experience. I would stop the screen share and
Yes,
yeah.
please.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would say the worst experience was, of course, knowing that the beautiful, magical Arctic places that we are seeing, the glaciers and all of it was uh, already going drastic change because of warming. We could see with our own eyes that the sea level had the extent of ice had decreased. We could see where the ice extent was in previous years. We could see the darkening of the ice in many places, and worst of all, uh, the feeling of helplessness when you know that there's Svalbard reindeer have died of starvation. I think that was the worst feeling. And the best experience was also the the incredible feeling of being so small in the vast uh, expanse of nature, and knowing that if given the opportunity, if the Arctic is protected with the Marine Arctic Peace Sanctuary, we could perhaps bring it all back.
Okay, and in the Arctic, right? Like, which was most devastating of all? Like the animals, the atmosphere, the air, the water, the ice, like the ice melting. Like, what was the worst thing that you say? Like, wow, this really needs to be awarded, or all of it.
Yeah, it's really the entire landscape. It's the Arctic is just the whole connected uh, expanse that needs to be protected. You cannot take out the polar bears from the Arctic and think that it will remain the same. You cannot take out the people who have lived in the Arctic for tens of thousands of years, and no, it will not be the same. So I think each component of the Arctic is very vital, and that is what makes the entire region so beautiful. It's the Arctic ecosystem, the air conditioner of this planet that sustains life, especially human civilization. So we need to protect the Arctic in its entirety with all the beautiful landscape, all the glaciers intact, all the remaining sea ice intact, all the ice shelves intact, and all the wildlife protected.
Okay, and how is the pandemic there in India
The
right now?
pandemic,
Yeah.
the, well, the pandemic is, you know, affected across the country, and the numbers are still increasing. The casualty rates are quite less, yeah, and I think they're decreasing, but the number of infections, unfortunately, are growing in most places. But I think people have developed some kind of a resilience, and one of the reasons is because everybody has become so much aware of what to do and what not to do. So, following the COVID-19 protocols has made it better than what it was in back in March or April.
And what about the climate change before the pandemic in India and during this pandemic? I mean, we are not done. We do not know when it's going to be over. We hope and pray God that it's over for next year. But we are like in this month of the year in everywhere in the world, and the pandemic is still going on. So, what about the environmental crisis in India before the pandemic and during this pandemic time?
Well, I don't think this short break or pause in development activities or human activities could in any way balance the hundreds of years of emissions that has been accumulated in the atmosphere, and which will continue to warm the earth for many years. Uh, Having said that, I think the pandemic did provide a break, especially since it happened in the breeding season for birds and animals. I think nature actually uh, recuperated in many ways, unbelievable ways, in fact, and air pollution went down in many other places. Uh, you must have heard the stories about how the Himalayas were visible from a city where it has not been seen for like maybe 100 years. But unfortunately, things are like back to normal. Traffic is almost the same as it was before the pandemic. I think the pollution levels have risen up now. But what I feel is that it's a demonstration that if as a community, the entire global community, if we can act, whether it's in Europe or in India, whether it's in the developed countries or in the emerging economics, we all can act, we all can change our ways. Maybe we can still save the planet.
Right. And I will give you three questions more. The first one is, what about India and its government about environmental justice? One. The second one, what about environmental policies over there? And the third one, this is gonna be really cute. Is there like Al Gore in India? You know, like Al Gore is our like mentor from Climate Reality. I'm also coming to Climate Reality Fellowship. So, is there an Al Gore in India?
Uh, well, number one, climate justice. Of course, there's a movement to ensure that there is climate justice ensured to the millions of poor, impoverished, rather affected people who are suffering from the water crisis, from prolonged drought, food scarcity as well, and disease, of course. Uh, but unfortunately, if you consider places like where I am born, Assam, we are one of the early climate impacted regions, and if anybody deserves climate justice to be brought in, it is our area, but we don't hear that conversation much. But hopefully, it will improve. And number two, how is the climate movement, right?
The
Uh,
number two was, what about environmental policies in the government?
yeah,
I
the
mean, there are a
climate.
lot of protesters everywhere.
Yes. Yeah, the environmental policies is something, India is a developing country with aspirations to be uh, a major economic power. So yes, there's a lot of decisions the government takes, which we feel are detrimental to the cause of the environment, for meeting the goals that we have promised, commitments under the Paris Agreement and other international agreements as well. And we also feel that the government is often falling back, especially in the post-pandemic development economy, on coal, so which is probably not progressive. And the third question was, is there an Al Gore in India? Well, I don't think we have such a strong political media personality, such a powerful, person who has embraced climate activism, who has been able to uh, reinvigorate the masses about climate change. No, unfortunately.
So in all these years, there's no politician, there's no policymaker, there's no change maker with such a power like Mr. Al Gore, like in United States.
Well, there are very
Yeah.
there are very powerful politicians, and you must be aware that our prime minister, uh, in fact, wrote a book on climate change before he became the prime minister, right? And then he has won very top environmental awards. But if you look at some of the decisions, including reliance on coal and a lot of
Right.
projects
Yeah.
that
Right.
is going to lead to deforestation, that doesn't
Totally.
seem like we have real leader
Thank
of
you
the
so
environment.
much, Riturak, for your presentation. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being for this Global Planetarium Congress from Lima. So thank you very much. And we will see you soon in another presentation. Thank you so much. Thank you all for listening and watching us. And I am welcoming you for the next panel that we are having from an international panel coordination here from Lima. Thank you so much. See you in a bit.